We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 75a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara brought the Mishnah which said that if you have animals that are karbonos that get mixed up with one another and they're all the same carbon, but they are different owners, so we don't know who the owner of each animal is, so you just bring the carbon for whoever the owner is. You don't identify the particular owner. And the Gemara in the previous Amud asked, how can you do that? Don't the karbonos require smicha, and therefore the owner is the one that needs to do the smicha? And so Rav Yosef answered on the previous Amud that we're talking about the karbonos of women where there is no smicha, but by the karbonos of men, the Gemara asked on the previous Amud, we wouldn't say this halacha. Is that really true? Abaye asks the following question. This is a question from a brisa. The brisa says, "Carbon yachid shenesariv b'carbon yachid." If you have an individual's carbon that gets mixed up with an individual's carbon, the carbon sibur shenesariv b'carbon sibur, or a communal carbon that gets mixed up with a communal carbon, the carbon yachid v'carbon sibur shenesariv u'zeh b'zeh. If you have an individual's carbon and a communal carbon that get mixed up with one another, no saying dalid matanos mikol echad v'echad. So he gives four applications of the blood from each one. V'im nasan matana mikol echad yotzef. He just gives one application that also will fulfill the obligation. V'im nasan arba mikulon yotzef. He gives four applications from all of them, not mikol echad v'echad, but from all of them he does four applications that would also be effective. B'amed devarim amurim. And when is this true? Shenisarvu chay, and that's if the animals get mixed up when they are alive. Avol nisarvu shchutin. But if things get mixed up after the animals are slaughtered, so then no sein arba matanos mikula, and then he gives four applications of blood from all of them. The blood is all mixed up together. V'im nasan matana achas mikulan yotzef. If he gives just one application, if he does just one application of the blood, he has fulfilled the obligation. Rebbe says, roen es hamatana, we have to look at the application of the blood. Im yeshba kedei lozeh kedei lozeh. If there's enough application of the blood that it could be for each carbon, so then ksheira, then it's kosher. There has to be that minimum shear, that minimum amount. V'im lav, and if not psula, so then it's disqualified. And so the Gemara says, Katani Yachid Dumya de Tzibor. So over here it talks about a carbon of a Yachid and a carbon of a Tzibor, and they should be similar. The Yachid should be similar to the carbon Tzibor. And Mat Tzibor Gavri, just like a carbon Tzibor is brought by men, Af Yachid Gavri, so too we're talking here about an individual's carbon, and we're talking about a man's carbon, and we're talking about the fact that these carbonos get mixed up, and the Brisa seems to be saying they get mixed up while they're alive, and you can still offer the carbonos, even though it's not possible to do the smicha, because we cannot identify the owner, so that goes against what we said on the previous Amud. And the Gemara continues and says, Amar Rava says, V'tizbra, is this logical? Hamitar Tzosahi, do you think that this brisa is a fixed brisa? It's not a proper brisa. To Katani, because what does it say over here? It says in the brisa, B'amed devorim amurim k'shenesarvu chayin. It says, what are we talking about? We're talking about when they get mixed up while the animals are alive. Avol nesarvu shchutin, but if they get mixed up when it's already slaughtered, lo, so then we wouldn't say the same halacha. And so Rava asks, Mali chayim, mali shchutin, what difference really is there between if they get mixed up alive or if they get mixed up after, if everything gets mixed up after the slaughtering? Elohachi kama, rather you have to say that what the brisa means is as follows. What are we talking about? We're talking about when it gets mixed up after being slaughtered, similar to the animals getting mixed up while alive, meaning bekosos, meaning they get mixed up but in different cups. The point over here is that the first part of the brisa is dealing with a situation where the blood of the various animals gets mixed up, but it's not that the blood is physically mixed all into one basin or into one bowl. They're all in different cups, and you just can't identify which blood belongs to which animal, belongs to which owner, and so that's why you do an application from every single cup. That's what the brisa was saying in the beginning of the brisa. Avol bebola, but if everything is really mixed up, if all the blood is mixed up, so now you can't do separate applications for each animal, for each cup of blood, so no sein dalid matanos lakulon, so then you just do four applications for everything, for all of the carbonos, v'im nasan matana achas lakulon yotza, and if you just do one application, it will also fulfill the obligation. That's what the brisa was saying, and so it's not talking about living animals at all, so there's no issue of smicha anymore if this all happened after the animals were slaughtered. Rebbe Omer, and then Rebbe says, Rowan es hamatana, we have to look at the application of the blood. Im yeshba kedei lozeh u kedei lozeh ksher. If it's a sufficient amount for this carbon and for this carbon for each one, then it's kosher. V'im la psul, and if not, it is psul, it's disqualified. The Gemara asks on Rebbe, umi islei l'Rebbe haisvar, does Rebbe really hold like this? V'hatanya, but we learned in a brayso. So Amar Rebbe says, l'divrei Rebbe Eliezer, according to Rebbe Eliezer, and Rashi explains, carbon yochid shenisare bekulu garsin on carbon, and all of them the text text, the proper text is carbon yochid b'carbon sibor. An individual carbon gets mixed up with a communal carbon, kagon soyer nasi b'sar haragolim. For example, the he-goat of the nasi gets mixed up with the he-goat of the holidays, o ola bi ola, or an ola gets mixed up with an ola. Hachi garsin on the proper text, the proper text is vim nasan matana mikol echad yotza. One matana from each one would also be effective. Kedamrim b'perek beishamai. This we say earlier in perek beishamai. Kol hanitanan ala mizbeach achitzon shenesanan b'matana achas kiper. On the outer mizbeach, just doing one application is going to be an atonement. Arba matanos, do you do 4 applications of blood? Rashi says that shtayim matanos, that's actually 2 applications. Shehein arba, which are 4, you do on each corner. And so if you do it on 2 corners rather, so then it's going to go on 4 walls of the mizbeach, kamar. That's what it means over here. Now when do we say that you need to do 4 matanos from each one lechatchila? Again, that's all in a situation where they're alive. Again, the Gemara is going to revise that. It means they're in separate cups. But if the blood gets mixed up after slaughtering, shenivlal damam b'kos echad, again, as the Gemara will explain, all the blood is in 1 cup. No sendalid matanos mikulam yachat. So then you just do 4 applications from all of them together. Sharei yesh kan mishnehem kasavar yesh bila, because you have from both of them, meaning both of the animals that got mixed up, the blood is all mixed up, because this Tana holds yesh bila, it's considered all mixed, and so 1 application will fulfill both. Af yochid begavri, then the Gemara said the individual should be men, v'afa gav de boy smicha, even though there's a requirement of smicha. Rashi notes, now you can't ask from carbon sibor. Why are we even getting involved in the carbon yachid and saying it's men? What about carbon sibor? Does that require smicha? Rashi says, shein smicha b'tzibor. There's no smicha by carbon sibor. Ela b'chatos hapnimios. We only have smicha by the inner chatos. V'acha b'pnimios lo kamayri midiktani arba matanos. Here we're not talking about the inner ones because it says arba matanos, and so we're not talking about the inner chatos, and so that's why we're asking from the carbon yachid. V'tizbra hamitar tzasahi. The Gemara then asked, does that make sense? Is this a correct brisa of hay chayin davku? Are we talking specifically about living animals? V'anisarvu kodem smicha kai, that they got mixed up before the smicha. Hakatani aval shchutin lo boy dal mikol echad lechatchila, but slaughtered you don't need 4 from each one lechatchila. Uveshchutin nami mashkachas lo deboy, but that's not true. By slaughtered animals also it could come out that you need to have applications of blood from each one. Kagon shenisarvu kosos bekosos, the cups get mixed up, not the blood getting mixed up. We don't know which one is which. You have a case where the blood didn't all get mixed up in 1 cup. Rather, you have to say that it says living animals doesn't really mean living animals necessarily. It means when do we need to do 4 matanos from each one? That's what we should do. That's if they get mixed up, meaning the cups get mixed up. And that's similar to the living animals getting mixed up. That each one is individual, is on its own. But if the 2 bloods got mixed into 1 cup, so no, saying arba matanos l'kul, and you give 4 applications for everything for both karbonos. Now you can't ask about smicha. We're talking after slaughtering. It was after the slaughtering and the smicha that it got mixed up. But again, if it's before smicha, then you would have an issue, because again, the smicha cannot happen if you can't identify the owner. And finally, the Gemara then brought the opinion of Rebbe, that Rebbe said you have to make sure there's a minimum shear. And the Gemara asks, is that really true according to Rebbe? But Rebbe says that according to Rebbe Eliezer, and this is going to continue on the next Amud, Rashi explains, Lagabe mechatas koi. This is talking about the mechatas. The mechatas are the waters of purification in terms of, for tumas meis. Umaisinan la lekaman bepirkin, sluchis shal mechatas hamukdoshin, shenafa lesochen mayim acherim kolshu. You have a situation where you had some mechatas and other water fell in. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Eliezer says you do 2 sprinklings. Well, the Kamon Mefarish Mil say, as the Gemara goes on, and will explain what Rabbi Eliezer is saying. The Kama Rebbe, and Rebbe said, L'divrei Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, Hazah ain't tzricha shir. Hazah doesn't need a minimum amount. Agava de gavra. In other words, you don't need a minimum amount to sprinkle on the person. The tzricha shir, because if you needed a minimum shir, Nehi nami diyesh bila. Granted that there's mixing v'samchinan Allah devada yesh bechlal hazah min amayim haksherim. Granted, we can say that in the water there certainly is some of the kosher water here. Umitzdarfin masha b'rishon masha b'shniya, and we can combine them. Miyemar demalya shiur. But if there was a minimum shear, who says that it's enough for the minimum shear? That's why it seems that there's no minimum shear by the mechatas. That's why we're bringing this opinion of Rebbe within Rebbe Eliezer, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Hey Amid Beis.